tomorrow is my anniversary. And gonna play some poker. I'll play 700-800 online this week. Everything's been pretty basic. Got like, I don't know, I think it was like a $200-300 win Monday. I think last night I lost. But like, nothing's been over $500. So yeah, for like the whole week, I'm up, I don't know, like $800, which is a good week. Anytime you're up $1,000 for playing online poker for a living, you can't really complain. One of the things, and this is a little insightful for you, if you're like life of a grinder, I'm going to pick up 0 things about poker. Well, you're not true. You're going to pick up some things, but I'm going to tell all of you a little secret right now. If you ever want to know if your opponent has a strong hand, say your opponent goes all in, or they bet pot, and you're in the take, you're debating, do I call them, do I not call them? What you got to do, and this is one of the reasons why I don't wear sunglasses at the table anymore, is you look right at them, stare at them. If you're really unsure, just keep staring at them. Eventually they're going to look at you, unless their name's Tom Dwan, but 99 out of 100 people will eventually look at you because they're like, wow, this fucking guy is staring at me for a solid minute and a half, and he's not sure if I have a big hand. If it doesn't take them that long, like if they look at you after 10 seconds, smile. You want to hear a good tell with poker players? People smile when they're excited. People subconsciously smile when they're excited. When somebody has a really big hand, guess what? They're excited. They will subconsciously, unwillingly smile back if they have a really strong hand. It's one of the first things I tell my students. I have a newer student. She's been with me for a couple of weeks now. I said, what do you typically do when you go to the poker table? And she says, well, I've got my hoodie on. I go there and I sit and I listen to my music while I play. I told her her first homework assignment was to go back to that table that night or the next night without headphones. You realize if somebody's been playing poker for 2 or 3 years with headphones, how dramatically different of a change that is. If you're sitting at the table right now with headphones, unless you're listening to some videos that give you insight on things like this, which I have some of my students record the sessions so that way they can listen back to some of the things I say, which I get. But my point is, if you're just like listening to music or you're watching a YouTube video for entertainment, you could be doing yourself harm because you're missing out on what people say. And it's not just what they say, it's how they say it. If you listen hard enough, if you listen carefully enough, and I'm not some fucking dojo master or whatever, even though I do coach students, even though I do have students, but if you take your headphones off and listen to the table, you're going to hear things. You're going to hear things that might give you certain tells, that might give you certain ideas, I know that my student really did not like that homework assignment, but I also know that my student to this day still plays without headphones. I actually going to a home game to play Pot Limit Omaha. So this is like a rare thing. But this tells you that Pot Limit Omaha is becoming more and more popular. So we're going to see how it is. I've been to this home game before. It's professionally ran. There's no security issues there. This is actually Zach's first time going to this home game. How are you feeling about it, Zach?
I'm going to win some money, so I'm feeling pretty good.
Yeah, so he's feeling pretty good. I'm feeling pretty good. We're going to give you an update afterwards. Pretty excited about it. I've already seen a couple of the people show up. I know everybody who's playing. And I know what their habits are on 10-20. Let's see if they have the same habits when I'm betting $2 and $4 and $600. I'm sure those habits will change, or we'll get paid. I'm going to play really smart, not splashy at all. I actually have a WSOP Michigan ring that I'm playing for at the same time. So I'm going to try recording some. Might be able to record the first hour. And then after that, I'll be in the tournament. So, yeah, don't forget, everybody, my meetup game's coming up in September. It's nice to have this here in the UP. Like, for it to be only an hour from my house, like a weekly game, so I could take a break from online. Like, this is a godsend, really. Now let's just see if we can run it up. You know, it's funny. I'm talking with my brother-in-law here, and I remember having a conversation with Raj in Chicago, which, Raj, if you're watching, we have a meetup game coming up in September. I hope to see your ass there. Adjustments. You know, I had a game I played down in Chicago with Raj, and afterwards he's like, hey, Professor, let me buy you a beer. He goes, I want to pick your brain for a minute. So he buys me a beer, we sit down, and we're just talking. The game's over with. Because at the charity groups, they can only run for 12 hours. So like at midnight or 1 in the morning, they have to cut it off by state law. Raj asks me, he says, what do you think is the biggest difference between a recreational player and a for-profit player? I say for-profit because I really like that term Bart Hansen used. So instead of saying professional, just say for-profit. And I thought about it because it was a great question. And then I answered, I said adjustments. And Raj says, what do you mean? And I said, well, see those guys that we played with tonight? I said, they've been playing the same way for 10 years. So, you know, when they bet, they usually have it. And so they're never going to change how they play. Change a little bit. If they see somebody who's really active at the table, they'll play back at them if they're a good enough player. And I said, you know, that's one of the biggest differences because all those guys I was playing with last night, I think a couple of them are capable of changing. Like I know a good friend of mine who was in that game last night is very capable. He's capable of changing on the fly and mixing it up. But most of those guys are not capable of like changing and playing back at people. Yeah, because I was in complete control the whole night. No one else was 3-betting. People would even have aces and they wouldn't 3-bet. I was the only one who was 3-betting, and I started picking it up at a higher frequency towards the end of the night when I started realizing that people were over-folding their hands. So when you notice something like that, for example, like if the board comes 6, 9, 3, and you have a set of 9s or a set of 6s, and say you bet and the turn comes a 5 and everybody checks, and say the river comes like a jack or something and everybody checks down, and your set of 6s is still good, you need to start saying, well, no one fired at that pot. Like somebody had to have a blocking 7, 4, 8, you know what I mean? So somebody had to have a blocker that should have, or position, so they should have fired at the pot. And when you start noticing that people aren't firing at pots, you make an adjustment, and then you can start buying a lot more pots. And when I was down $800, I made that adjustment. I was like, oh, I'm noticing this. So I started 3-betting probably 20%. 1 out of 5 hands, I was 3-betting. The other 3 out of 5 hands, I was just raising. So yeah, I probably had an 80% VPIP frequency last night. Which is substantially high. But again, when you feel like you're in complete control of the table and you know where you're at every time, you know, go with it. My very first read of the night cost me $742. It was a bad read, but it allowed me to understand where players were for the rest of the night. So in a way, it was like an investment. There's a few big hands where you could tell that they were limit players. I think the reason why the game was so good is because they were used to playing 10-20 limit. As you know, a limit player is not going to fold for a $20 bet. So we had one hand where we looked out at deuce 5-7-7. Complete shit hand. And just to tell you how inexperienced this table was, this is a hand I would never play had anybody at the table be doing any kind of significant raising. Like every once in a while you'd have a straddle and you'd have like 6 limpers and somebody would pot it to like 80. That would happen maybe once an hour. So for the most part, I was the only aggressor. I was the one raising. There is like one other person who might have raised, but my VPIP was pretty high. I'm sitting with $2,000 in front of me and you've got $2,000 in front of you. I'm getting the implied odds to play shit hands like deuce 5-7-7. I think I even had 3 hearts in my hand too. So we go, I call $5 and even go hee-haw as I call. And we go, I don't know, it was like 8 ways to a flop for $5. So the flop comes 3, 4, 9 with 2 diamonds. So I have an open-ended straight draw. Somebody bets out full pot, $40. I'm like, okay, this is either, a set or it's the nut diamond draw. Well, we get a lot of callers, and to where there's $260 in the pot. So I think we get like 5 callers for $200 or somewhere around there. My gin card comes. It's the 6 of clubs. And the first person to act just to open pots. The next player calls. It folds to me, and I pot it for $1,200. And it folds to the original bettor, who gets it all in for like $500 or $415. And then it gets to the guy who initially bet pot on the flop, which means he's either got a set or a diamond draw. And it's an extra $1,000 for him to go. And of course he calls. River pairs the board with a dyed. Now I only have $1,000 behind. There is already over $3,000 in the pot. There's $3,200 in the pot. And both of us have about $1,000 behind. And when the board paired, I said, fuck. I said, but it is top pair, so it's unlikely he's got quad 9s. I'm like, but if he goes all in, I think I have to call. I'm pretty sure he was on diamonds. And yeah, he checks it, and I checked it behind. And he actually had deuce 5 with the nut diamonds. So I could see him making a call there, because there's going to be a lot of times where I'm going to pressure there with deuce 5 as well. That was one of the big hands that I was not able to record, because I was also in the tournament at the same time. Those players are going to have to change the way they play. Otherwise, that game's going to break in about 4 weeks. Not when you have like 6 or 7 players who play the way they play. Because the thing is they've been playing limit with each other for like 30 years, right? The key difference is, because they're recreational players, they don't change the way they play. I think they'll just stop coming to the game, because they'll be like, every time I come to the game, I lose $1,500, $2,000. The really tight players played really tight with a bet pot. It was like, okay, you're not mixing it up. There's some people who play there who have no bluff range. Like, so they are pretty tight, but it also means if you've got 3 of them, you can control the table and buy a lot of pots. Because at one point I was up $1,300 and then I was down $800. So that's a $2,100 swing. And then I changed my style, because I realized a lot of people are checking when a scare card comes out. And because of that, you can start picking up more pots. And that's what I started doing. So I was at a home game the last 2 weeks. And the first time I went there, I posted a vlog about it. And I had to take the vlog down. I didn't have to, but I chose to. But I posted it. And then we had another vlog, another home game. In the first game, I won like $1,500, $1,800, something like that. And the second time, and after, I remember when I was driving home, my buddy was with me, Zach, and I said to him, that game's not going to last but 4 weeks. And he goes, why is that? And I said, because I'm either going to break that game, or they're going to find an excuse for me not to come to that game. I said, because the players that are playing there, even though I've played with them and they're all friendly guys, and if they're watching this video right now, I have the utmost respect for all of you, regardless of how good or bad of a player you are. But it's one of those things where, my job as a professional poker player is to make as much money as I can, even if it's off of guys that I like. That's just the true story. And so I told Zach, after the first time we went there, I said, those guys make really bad decisions. And they're used to calling hands in 10-20 because it only costs them $20 or maybe $30. I said, when it costs them $300, they're just like, sure, And they don't realize that they keep making the same mistakes over. Because if I'm forcing you to call 300, I can almost assure you you're not getting the right odds. You're getting just the wrong amount of odds based on a lot of different things. How I'm feeling, how you're running. If I've been picking on you all night, I'll be a little bit lenient on you, or I'll at least try to be. Sometimes people just keep running their head into me, and sometimes the card just does that. So I told Zach, I said, I'm going to break the game. I said, because because they're going to continue to make the same mistakes. And I said, and after about 3 or 4 weeks, after about 4 weeks, people will not want to show up because I'm consistently winning, they're consistently losing, and they're not losing like 500 here, 800 here, or losing 800 and then booking a $400 win like you will with 1020. They're going to be consistently losing like $2,000 a week, every time they come. Well, this Wednesday when I was there, I crushed it. I won $6,300 in a 5-5 with a max buy-in of $1,000. So you can imagine how hot I was running. It didn't matter what it was. If the board was like Jack Deuce 4, and I bet half pot because I was the original aggressor with Ace Queen Queen 5, the turn would come a queen, and I would bet full pot on the turn, and I would get called or jammed all in against, of course, somebody who had a set of jacks. That's sometimes the deck just hits you square in the nuts. The host of the game went to the local casino here, and apparently some people were like, hey, nice basement, hey, I see your Josh's vlog has got your basement in it and the poker table and whatever. I never disclose location. I never disclose if there is a rake at a house game. I never disclose any of that stuff. I don't disclose even what day it was on. Of course, I just told you now it was on Wednesday. But so I don't disclose any of that. And, of course, he's freaking out. What would you guys do? I'm curious. I can't blame the guy. When I look back at it, I'm like, yeah, after what he saw me go through, okay, I guess I'd be a little paranoid too. I can respect that. I can honestly say with a straight face, I can respect his decision. Yeah, having only 2 sessions, anybody can get lucky in 1 session. Don't get me wrong, I did play good last week, but there were some parts where I got lucky in. I played really good reads. I probably won $1,200, $1,400 on reads. And the rest of it was probably just the cards playing themselves. Like, there's times when I talk to my students and I say, well, how much of it was bad play versus variance? Like if you get it all in with a wrap and a flush draw and you lose against top set, that's just variance. Like, everybody's going to go broke there. But you call with like an ace high flush when the board is paired after the person bets and you still decide to call, that's bad play because your read was off if you lost that hand. So I always ask my students, how much of it was bad play versus variance? Anytime you have a winning session, you always want to look back and say, how much of it was good play versus variance? So sure, I won like $6,000, but in all seriousness, maybe 1,500 of it was good play. The other 4,800 of it or 4,000 of it was variance. The thing that makes a for-profit player able to do it, and keep in mind, only 1 out of 20 players are for-profit players, compared to a recreational player, is the difference in our reads, the difference in our abilities. I was having breakfast the other day with my dad, who taught me how to play poker. And I was telling my dad that I can tell, based on how quickly somebody grabs their chips and how they bet with their chips, how it's different than the previous time that they bet. And that might be a tell depending on the hand and previous hands that I've watched them bet. And what I'm talking about is the inconsistency between a player grabbing their chips when they're bluffing and grabbing their chips and betting when they have a strong hand. Believe it or not, timing and how you grab your chips, for-profit players should be paying attention to every single detail. And I do. And it shocked my dad. My dad looked at me and goes, I had no idea you could tell the strength of somebody's hand based on how quickly they grab their chips. Didn't even dawn on them. So when I say good reads equals, X profit, or bad reads equals X profit, and then the rest is variance, that's very true. So again, if you look back at, like I said, having a huge win, maybe 1,500 of it was good reads. The rest was variance. Thought it was going to take me 4 weeks to break that game, and I did it in 2. One of the things I always say to players is never apologize for scooping a pot. If you're really sorry about winning, give the chips back. And even if you win off of me, I always tell people, well, don't apologize. You put your chips in, you earned it. If I harass you when you get it all in on just an open-ended straight draw, when I have top set and you get it all in on the turn and you win, I don't want to stop you from calling the next time that happens. I want to, have you call again, and again and again and again. Play smart, everybody. Run like a god.